Welcome, everyone. We're going to start in just a second. I want to give just a few minutes to allow everybody to join. So if you will give us just a few seconds to let all our attendees in the meeting, and we will start. Okay, so tonight, thank you for joining us for our webinar. We're very excited about this webinar. We have an excellent group of panelists for you tonight, but this is what we're talking about tonight: school psychologists supporting children in school, at home, and in life. We are very committed to talking about the role of helping professionals in our schools. Public Schools First NC has been talking about this issue for years now, and we have seen some progress in people understanding the role of school psychologists and other helping professionals in school. And we are so excited tonight to bring you some more information to help you understand the role of school psychologists and also how you can be an advocate for supporting this very important work in our community. Now, we're not sure, we are recognizing that we're having feedback and we're not quite sure why. So I'm really sorry about that, and I hope that you can be patient with us. And we will just plug on through here and see if we can figure it out. But I'd like to introduce to you tonight our three panelists. First is Lee Kokinas. She is currently a school psychologist in Wake County. She has a background in general education, special education, and early intervention with experience working in public schools, early intervention, and community mental health settings. She is active in the North Carolina School Psychology Association, which I encourage you to go to the website if you get a chance tonight. Lots of really good information there, and serves in the leadership role in that organization. Her contributions have led to the networking and partnerships that have resulted in several bills drafted and supported during the 2018, 2019, and 2020 legislative sessions. We're really proud of her here in Wake County because she was the 2016 School Psychologist of the Year for Wake County. She has several other awards, but then last year she was the National School Psychologist of the Year. So of course we could not start thinking about who should be on our panelists without thinking about Lee. Also tonight joining us is Dr. Leah Wade. Dr. Wade is a lead school psychologist with the Charlotte-Mecklenburg schools. So we have here tonight two of the largest school systems in the state, and their wide array of experiences and programs I think will be of great interest to our audience. Her work focuses on providing a range of psychological services to support adolescents. She has served on departmental and district-wide committees, such as student services, where she works to ensure equitable access to services for all children. She received her Bachelor's of Art in Psychology from Winston-Salem State and her Master's of Art from Appalachian State University, along with a Master's of Art in School Counseling. You see how young she looks here tonight. I can't imagine she's stacked up all these degrees, but she's also recently earned her doctorate in education from Gardner-Webb University. She believes that the service to others is vital for sustainability in our community, and she participates in lots of community organizations like Concord 101. And she was selected for the Cabarrus County Schools Fall 2020 Realignment Study Public Advisory Committee, very actively involved in the community. And our third panelist is Ina Nico. She is a nationally certified school psychologist serving students, families, and school staff in Wake County schools. She provides direct support to students, such as identifying students' strengths and their needs, their academic as well as their behavioral needs, She does counseling and social skills training. She also provides a lot of consultation to parents and teachers as we learn more tonight about what school psychologists do. We'll understand some of the roles that she's playing in her school. Her accomplishments include developing various programs for high school students, including a college prep program for African youth, which has had 100% graduation rate since it started. She also was named the Wake County School Psychologist of the Year for 2017. So I think you will agree with me that we have quite an outstanding group of panelists tonight, and we're going to let our conversation start tonight with Lee. And so, Lee, if you will.
Okay, well, thank you so much for inviting us here, and I'm gonna talk a little fast, and so you might want to slow me down if I need to, because I really want to highlight the work that Leah and Ina are doing in their districts and talk a little bit about what the work I've done. So I'm going to tell you the story of North Carolina school psychology, and I title it many times to many people and then all over again, because that's what we've all been doing for about the last 10 years. Next slide, please. Yvonne, can you advance the slide?
Yeah, my internet's a little slow tonight. I'm sorry.
And I think we might be getting feedback from you, Yvonne. I don't know,
I'm not sure why, but I'm going to.
I think that's better. I say, and then can you hear me? If you're muted, you're good. So a lot of people ask, who are school psychologists? So school psychologists we're psychologists who understand the educational system, and we're the educators who understand psychology. So what we are able to understand all the systems in all the school systems, and we're able to understand the psychology of learning and child development and how it all melds together for a whole framework. We are highly qualified professional educators. We have a graduate degree at the advanced level, master's degree plus advanced certification, and or PhDs, which require 1,200-hour internship and more more hours internship for PhD. We provide comprehensive psychological and educational services to a diverse set of students, and we support practices that help children to learn, learn and practice positive behavior and develop healthy habits. So again, through that whole child framework. And we also support students' social emotional learning and their mental health. We work in schools, universities, clinical settings, and private practices, and we also work sometimes at the state level in the Department of Public Instruction or at the federal level. Next slide, please. Yvonne, could you advance the slide? Okay, there you go. The next two slides are what we get from our graduate training. And so a lot of times when we're talking to legislators or other stakeholders or just groups of people in our community of practice, what we like to highlight is the depth and breadth of our graduate training. So most often we're paralleled with the evaluation and the assessment piece, but we're deeply trained in providing and consulting on academic interventions, providing and consulting on mental and behavioral health interventions. We provide instructional support through a consultative model. We are aligned with our special education services. We understand the policies and procedures, and we assist with crisis preparedness, response, and recovery. We have family, school, and community collaboration. We work very closely with our school counselors, our school social workers, and our school nurses to address that. And we are also advocates for social justice and cultural competence. We are trained in data collection and analysis, all of these, the resilience and the risk factors, again, consultation and collaboration, diversity in development and learning, understanding research and program evaluation, sometimes at the school level, but at the district and the state level. Have a deep understanding of our professional ethics and a deep understanding of education law. Okay. So what work might we be involved in public charter and private school communities? I broke the rule here and put way too many words on a slide, but these are all the things that you might see going on where school psychologists are involved in. And I see Leah smiling because she knows you're involved in this, Leah, right? We do a lot of assessments, and we are in a lot of meetings discussing kids with learning and or behavioral health needs. We have a deep understanding of the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. We are involved with counseling and behavioral health, a lot of suicide assessments, threat assessments, and student struggling. So we support struggling students. So we're seeing families and working with families and kids when they are at some pretty low points in their life. We provide academic support through interventions, either individual or group. I'm currently providing a writing intervention to a student, and which I love doing. We do a lot of consultations with teachers and parents. We are involved, as I said before, with team collaboration. And we support school improvement through database decision making and really looking at how schools are, what multi-tiered systems of support are available and how they're addressing groups of students and growing the students. I think I mentioned this before. Other settings for school psychologists, we're employed in our training programs as professors. Many people I know are adjunct faculty by night and, superpower school psychologists in the schools by day. We're involved in research to support evidence-based practices. Some of us are in clinical settings. Many of us are in private practice, and some of us are working for departments of education, either at the state or federal level. So next slide. When do children need a school psychologist? As you can see, there are a lot of different scenarios that kids come to me with. I could probably spend all day talking about all the different stories that I've heard over my career. I still feel the same way after decades of being in the field of education and psychology as I do the first year. I'm amazed at what families go through, and I always feel privileged when they come to me with with their learning difficulties, any behavior problems, especially when they're experiencing depression or suicidal thoughts. We have many kids. I've had many kids that have come from other countries, that they've literally come from a war-torn country, and they come into public education in Wake County schools, and we are here to support them. Many kids, as we know, are dealing with poverty, violence, homelessness, foster youth, loss and grief of different kinds, especially now, and a lot of family issues. There's a lot that kids, you spoke about ACEs before, there's a lot that kids come to school that they're carrying in their backpack, and we know what they are, and those are heavy issues to deal with. So we serve lots of different kids. Next slide, please. Now I'm going to pivot a little bit because I want to tell you, the story of what's going on in North Carolina. On a national level, we have a nationwide shortage of school psychologists, and that is amplified at the state level. So we have about 772. These numbers will differ a little bit depending on which report you're going off, which data set you're going off, but there's roughly 772 school psychologists serving 1.5 million school children. And then just so you know, Wake County has about 115 of them, and Mecklenburg County, Charlotte Meck has about 85. So that gives you, that's most of us, that's a big chunk of us in the state. We have roughly 1,251 licensed school psychologists through DPI, and only about 60% of our employable workforce serves public school children, and many are private practitioners. And then as of May 2019, and that was, we don't have clean data from last spring, but as of May 2019, there were about 80 statewide vacancies. And just to give you that perspective, that's up from 65 vacancies in 2016. So our vacancies are growing. Next slide, please. Access to mental health care, and that's a biggie for us. So what we know now is that currently 22 North Carolina school districts, all rural, have no or less than one full-time employed school psychologist, and that weighs heavily on me. I think that weighs heavily probably on every school psychologist and every other CISP team member in the state as well, and it should. There's 1.5 million school children across our state that have limited access, because if you don't have full-time access to a school psychologist, and most school psychologists are stretched between multiple schools because there's just not enough of us. Leah is going to talk about how she is at one high school. So that's not the norm, but that's great. That is ideally what we would like to have, in a perfect world. Next slide, please. We have, school psychologists have a licensure threshold that's higher than any other licensed professional educator in North Carolina. And these are, so our current pay scale is roughly 15,000 below the national median pay scale of 76,000 is. So what does that mean for us in North Carolina and for North Carolina schools? Because it's not just about what it means for our pay, it's also what it means for our state to be competitive with other states, and specifically to be competitive with states like Virginia and South Carolina, knowing that rural school districts or even larger school districts that border South Carolina and Virginia, knowing that you can have such a highly trained and talented school psychologist that could step over state lines and make about $10,000 more, or perhaps more than that, limits our competitiveness. And we are currently not eligible for our national certification. We have loads of school psychologists who have national certification. And while other North Carolina professional educators are eligible for a pay supplement for their national board certification, we don't have that equitable pay supplement for school psychologists. So we can't use that as a recruitment tool currently. Next slide, please. We're currently unable to fill our vacancies and I put or graduate enough school psychologists to fill our vacancies, and that's something that we are working on. And our shortages disproportionately impact rural districts, but they now impact urban districts. It's a heavy lift to recruit in all districts now, even in Mecklenburg County and Wake County. And we have 5 training programs across North Carolina, and none of them are in HBCUs, which I would like to see one in an HBCU in the future. Our current staffing ratio is about one school psychologist to 1,943. It's not 1 to 943. I'm sorry, that is incorrect. There should be another 1 in there, but 1,193. Which is the highest ratio when compared to our other CISP members. And the recommended ratio is 1 to 500. Next slide, please. The 4 critical areas of need are, we would like sufficient, dedicated, and recurring funding of positions. We know that in some cases and in some counties, when they can't fill that position for a school psychologist, the position funding gets rolled over into another position. Which is a necessity. We know that with the way funding structures are set up now, that it sometimes gets rolled over. We'd like proportionate representation in all NC public schools, because every single North Carolina school child needs and benefits from having those CISP teams: school psychologist, school counselor, school nurse, school social worker. That's my family in my school, and that's who I rely on, and that's where kids benefit from that whole child framework. And we need that infrastructure that supports the effective teaming, and we desperately need to recruit and retain talented providers. Okay, so just a little bit about what I do in my schools and in my profession. I have an elementary and a middle school, and support the evaluations to determine special education eligibility. I work hand in hand with my special ed team to support students with disabilities or ones who might just need tiered interventions. I provide consultations to parents and teachers. I serve on student support team, intervention teams, and special education teams. I provide interventions. I serve on a low incidence assessment team. I currently serve on the NCSPA, Legislative and Public Policy Committee. I serve as a commissioner on the Commission on Access to Sound Basic Education. And obviously, I advocate at the local and state level. And here's what you get when you have comprehensive services. I'm not going to talk so much about mine because I really want you to hear from Leah and Ina. But, oh wait, go back one slide, Yvonne. Sorry, I was going to talk a little bit longer than 5 seconds. So access to comprehensive school psychological services. So I have a group that I run at my middle school, and it's called the POGS. Planning, Organization, and Goal Setting. I actually got the idea from Ina many years ago at a conference. And this group is a leadership group. We have different guest speakers come in. We talk a lot about what leadership looks like and growing kids' skills. It's all strengths-based approach and introducing kids to different concepts, getting them to see themselves in a way that is on their terms and is through their eyes, and not through someone else's eyes, and not perhaps how they've been pegged as a student. So I love doing this group. It's like my pride and joy to do this. And that's Lavelle Matan in the background. He was one of my guest speakers, which I was like, you know, giggling on the phone to get this man to come to our school and speak. So it was just an awesome experience. Next slide. This is just a slide, you know, teamwork. We're all in it for professional advocacy. We're doing this together. This is our legislative day. This is a cross section of school psychologists from across the state that came together in May 2019 to advocate on behalf and highlight school psychology and get people talking about what does that look like in our schools and how do schools benefit. So I think I'm close to the end here. Future directions in advocacy. Here's just some things that are like coming down the road. We hope to get a school psychology fellows program. We feel like we have the data to support that. Want to support grants to support rural school districts and getting increased access. And we would greatly like to increase the diversity in our school psychology programs, possibly at a HBCU. We have a continued push for legislative pay scale increase in funding, and we would like equitable pay supplement for NCSP. And one of the tools that we have used, I'm going to talk about in the next couple of slides. These addressing shortages and pipeline issues, what have we gotten? What are some things that our advocacy has made inroads for? So here are some of the things. We recently had Senate Bill 113, which was an education omnibus bill that will support DPI licensed school psychologists being able to still work in their district and possibly go support a rural district where there's some gap in services. We are now on the list as eligible professionals to receive forgivable educational loan service, not load service, sorry about that. And that window of application, if you know any young person that might be interested, they can apply for that. The window opens on December 1st, and that took us a lot to get our names on that. And I'm currently supervising an NC State student who is a recent recipient of FELS, so that made me feel so good. We have NCSP reciprocity across states, which we got thanks to the PEPSIC Commission and State Board of Ed. Thank you so much. To streamline the licensure process by accepting a nationally certified school psychologist from across state lines. As like, you know, like, come on in, we know you're great, we want you. We had Senate Bill 75 passed, which is a school safety bill, and that provided funding for specialized instructional support personnel for school safety. It also called for a comparison study of school psychologists and school counselors, and it provided money for, actually I have this right here, this coping cats training that we did in my district. So this was a direct impact that every single school psychologist in my district got trained on this, and that translates into increased access for students. Next slide, please. And then finally, we had the Senate Bill 476, which was passed in May 2020, and that requires suicide prevention training and risk referral protocol. So a lot's gone on in the last 5 years, especially, that has led to increased access to mental health services for school children across the state, which I'm super proud of. So that's my where you can send me a message on Twitter if you like. I'm going to hand it off to Leah so she can talk about what she is doing in her district.
Good evening. Can you hear me? Good evening. I want to say thank you for inviting me to be a panelist to discuss school psychological services in North Carolina during a global pandemic. I am Dr. Leah Wade, a practicing school psychologist for over 20 years in North Carolina. Thank you to Lee Coquinos for providing an overview of school psychology. My presentation revolves around providing school psychological services, utilizing the model for comprehensive and integrated school psychological services, also known as the National Association of School Psychologists, or NAS Practice Model. The NAS Practice Model represents our official policy regarding the delivery of school psychological services. This model outlines how services are integrated to best meet the needs of students. The NAS Practice Model outlines how we work with all of our stakeholders. By adopting this model as a framework for school psychological services, it allows us, as well as our district leaders, to make progress towards being able to provide support to all of our children. This process is often a multi-year process, but once the process is started, it is phenomenal because the work that is being done is ultimately helping our children. So first, I will start by talking about data-based decision making, and you can keep it on that slide for me. So as I mentioned earlier, the NAS Practice Model provides a comprehensive set of services for students. Lee Coquinos hinted and told you guys that I am fortunate enough to be able to serve a single high school assignment. My district in which I'm employed in recognized the need for all student services, including school psychologists, to be closer to the national recommended ratio. So I want you to keep this in mind as I go through 5 different domains, and so you can see what is possible when we have a better ratio to be able to provide services. So in regards to database decision making, last school year, all school psychologists were tasked with facilitating the process called the FAMS. The FAMS stands for facilitated the North Carolina Facilitated Awareness of Multi-Tiered Systems of Support, also known as the FAMS. This was a way for our school family to be able to identify all of our strengths and needs in multiple areas. Because we were in remote learning, I worked with my principal to identify team members to make sure that we had representation from all of the departments. Our team had school counselors, our social worker, we had teaching staff from the English department, science, social studies, world languages, as well as physical education and PE. Once those team members were identified, we talked about what would be the most appropriate steps to be able to share the survey with the staff, and then how will we meet so that we can build consensus on each of the items. So I created the framework for that particular process for my school, along with the MTSS specialist assigned to our school. Together, we were able to disseminate the survey. Staff members who were selected to be on the team completed the survey, and then we met using an online format to be able to build consensus on all of the items. That was the standard practice for school psychologists, but because I'm at a sole school assignment, my principal allowed me to be able to go further with this, to be able to create our current 2-year MTSS plan for our high school. So our work continued by dividing into 4 different subcommittees. Those subcommittees were academic, leadership, behavior, and social and emotional learning. I participated on the leadership and academic subcommittee, but I facilitated the work of the social and emotional learning subcommittee. That work consisted of us looking at those questions that pertain to social and emotional learning, and then we completed a gap analysis. The gap analysis allowed us to look at where we were realistically with each of those questions, and realistically, where do we want to be in a year and in 2 years. And then as a team, we identified the steps that we would have to take in order for us to get there. After our team crafted our part of the MTSS plan, all of the other subcommittees reconvened to our larger committee, and I facilitated the discussion where each subcommittee reviewed their work, we asked clarifying questions, we discussed additional steps. But in this process, we had to make sure that we consider all cultural information, the linguistic needs of our students, as well as the resources that we had within our community. And so when during that process, we wound up having a 2-year multi-tiered systems of support plan. That plan started in the fall of 2020. It is a fluid plan where we do adjust and make changes as our needs change and shifts. And that is the plan that guides our work in regards to supporting our students, our staff, as well as parents and our important community stakeholders. So that is an example of being able to utilize my leadership skills as well as my knowledge and training with analyzing data to be able to work with our team to build that plan. The next practice that I would like to talk about, and you can change the slide, please, is family, school, and community collaboration. The National Association of School Psychologists realizes the importance of having all stakeholders involved when being able to provide comprehensive services to students in our schools. Our association recognizes that we know how to identify student strengths, what the needs are, and to be able to select evidence-based practices to be able to support everyone in this practice. So again, being at a sole school, I've been able to do things that a typical school psychologist is not able to do, and then the frequency of which I'm able to do that has been increased as well. In the heart of all communities are parents who provide us insight into their homes, their children's lives, and their community. For over 20 years, I have engaged parents by providing a range of parenting training and/or classes depending on their needs. My exploration with parent training started with Positive Discipline by Jane Nelson. Susanna Smith, a retired school psychologist, trained me and other school psychologists interested in supporting parents. Initially, I offered parenting classes in a small church across from a local elementary school. Eventually, I expanded the types of topics that I offered to parents to include cognition and learning, mental health issues, such as depression and anxiety, categorical topics such as specific learning disabilities, intellectual disabilities. And then when I was assigned to a Title I elementary school, I participated in Truancy Court. And Truancy Court is an initiative where those students who were most at risk for not attending school and had excessive unexcused absences will participate in a program to reduce those barriers and to discuss with them the importance of attending school. And so I provided the parenting training, and the focus was using 7 Habits of Highly Effective Families by Stephen Covey. Now that I'm at a high school, my sessions primarily focus on social emotional learning and meeting the needs of adolescent students. Yearly at the school that I serve, we have something that's called Parent Jam. Parent Jam is an initiative where all of the support team works together to be able to provide different workshops for parents. Last school year, I recognized a need with being able to discuss social and emotional needs of adolescents with parents based on my interactions with parents, being able to review data from various portals that I have access to, as well as trends that I noticed from different evaluations that I conducted. Similarly, I offered the same training this year, but because we're in a pandemic, I utilized an online format. I made sure to integrate videos, and I had interactive activities for the parents to participate in. So as you can see, my parenting experiences have grown over time, but being in a single school assignment, it has allowed me to be able to look at what is the particular need of my particular high school, and then to be able to provide that service for them. I also work with teachers as well during collaboration. So I will talk about our school's reentry plan a little later in this presentation, but in the reentry plan, we talked about being able to support the needs of staff because we know that staff would be working with students who may have developed mental health situations that they didn't have before, and worried about some of the information that they're hearing and what's going on in our communities. So the subcommittee and we met and we created a presentation for our staff that we did at the beginning of the school year. That presentation provided detailed information on social emotional learning, different strategies and ways to be able to support students. We talked about our panorama screener, that was up and coming, and we're so excited about that. And then we also discussed with them what are different strategies and things that they can do to be able to support the social and emotional learning needs of students. Because we are in a global pandemic, we do have a shared Google Drive, and on that shared Google Drive, we have all of the resources that are available to staff. We have a social and emotional learning calendar. We have activities for them to be able to do. We've created motivation moments as well as different question stems that staff members can do with the students. And then we also have our presentations that we've done in the past so that staff members can access any of the videos and other resources that were referenced in that presentation. We also have a staff Canvas page, and on that Canvas page, we have a section for social emotional learning. And just like the shared Google Drive, we have very similar information on there as well. And both of those online portals are maintained by me. All information is updated on a regular basis, and it reflects whatever activities that our school will have going on that day or that week to be able to support students. And then lastly, what's an example of how do I collaborate with students? Our students are phenomenal. When I started early in my career, I just loved preschoolers. I just loved the little 4- and 5-year-olds, and I just thought I was going to be a preschool psychologist. And then when I shifted to the high school, oh my gosh, I can't even imagine myself working with any other population. That's because they are active in their learning, and they can actually talk to you about what their needs are, and then you can help them with identifying different resources and steps and things that they need to do to be able to get there. So this school year, the district in which I'm employed in recognized the need to support the social and emotional learning needs of all of our students. From kindergarten through 12th grade, we now have a SEL block at every school at every level. My principal contacted me this summer and she said, Dr. Wade, I want to charge you with overseeing this for our school. Totally new to me, but because of my experiences, my knowledge about adolescent development, the resources and things that were out there, I said absolutely. And so with the high school advisory block, every day for 45 minutes, students are introduced to various topics centered around social and emotional learning, social justice, and or college career awareness and planning. So we needed to introduce that to our students because certainly that was something new for them and for us as well. So our second week of school, we planned a series of introductory activities. The very first day, we talked about what is social and emotional learning. Our district uses Castle's definition of SEL, and we look at the domains of self-awareness, self-management, responsible decision-making, relationship skills, and social awareness. So that is what the first day activity focused in on, so they can know what's the premise of SEL and what would be the areas that we would cover. Because we were in remote learning, days 2, 3, and 4, or Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, were spent introducing them to Naviance, as well as Canvas and College Foundation of North Carolina. I work collaboratively with the school counselors that are on that committee in regards to pulling together those activities for them to do. And then the final culminating activity was on that Friday. And that is when 3 different activities from Naviance was selected to help them to figure out kind of like, what are my interests? What do I like to do? What are some things about myself since it was the beginning of the year? So that is how I provided indirect services to our students to be able to kick off our high school advisory block. I am known as the SEL guru at my school. All things SEL comes to Dr. Wade. So I am constantly checking my email first thing in the morning to make sure that everyone is ready for their SEL block. So collaboration with family, school, and the community often leads us to ways to support students and all of our stakeholders. So for the next section, I will actually talk about mental behavioral health and interventions. So the next slide, please. So as I mentioned earlier, with the work of the SEL subcommittee, we, along with the student services team, created our school's reentry plan for students to support their social and emotional needs. We started out by looking at our existing data to see where we are. Oh, excuse me, you guys hear my dog? To see exactly where we were in each of those areas. Then with the members of the support team to include our school counselors, our school social worker, career development coordinator, our school-based mental health therapist, we looked at what are some trends and things that we were seeing with our students during the remote session, and how can we create and craft a plan that will be applicable and useful for our students in our school setting. So what we did was we used the multi-tier system of support model, and we created core support for all students, regardless of their grade, their program of study. We identified supplemental support, and then we also identified our intensive support. Our core support primarily looked at physical needs. So what were those things that students might be lacking when they return to school? I do not work at a Title I high school, but we were aware of needs that were going to be unmet because parents were not working, they had reduced hours. And so what were those physical needs and things that we needed to do that on a typical year we didn't have to be as concerned about? So working with our school social worker, those needs were identified, and then we were able to gather those things at the beginning of the year and distribute that to all of our students that needed it, as well as our students in our homeless students. We also looked at the social and emotional learning needs that came through our high school advisory block in regards to the activities that we did with them. And then it also comes in something that we call Freestyle Fridays. So Freestyle Fridays would be every Friday for 45 minutes. We offer special topics for students. Our topics have ranged from stress management, peer pressure, conflict resolution, time management, drug awareness, college and career planning. Myself, along with the school counselors, all of our support staff participates. But in particular, my sessions focus in on stress management. As a committee, we recognize that many of our students were struggling with the online format and being able to manage those academic demands at home, as well as assuming additional responsibilities at home, being we are a high school, so some of them had to do what? Monitor and oversee younger siblings and things like that. So during the stress management series that I facilitated, it was phenomenal. I actually talked with them about what is stress management, being able to identify different stressors that they had, the triggers, being able to use a survey format to identify what those triggers are, and then to be able to rate them from most severe to least severe, providing them with strategies on how to manage that stress, and then actually demonstrating for them those ways of relieving that stress. So matter of fact, it was 2 Fridays ago, I had to think, we did the mindfulness video, and the school counselor and I co-facilitated that session with me. And we went through the mindfulness video and talked about how we felt prior to the video. We did the video and then talked about how we felt following the video. So overall, our Freestyle Fridays is based on evidence that we see. Our school, and I will get to that in a second, our school, well, again, the district that I worked in recognized that we needed to assess where students are in relations to their social and emotional learning. So I am so excited to say that we use Panorama, which is a social emotional learning screener. It was done K-12. And so again, my principal asked me to facilitate that process, which required me to go to some trainings, develop the schedule for remote administration for the first time ever at our school. And happy to say that we had almost a 60% response rate. So we were able to get responses from almost 60% of our students, and we're currently right now in the process of analyzing data. We're looking at our school-wide trends to see where are we as a school in each of those areas, and then we're also looking at trends by grade level. And then our Freestyle Friday topics will revolve around the trends that we found from that data. All right, so the well-being of students is of utmost importance to me, and another way of supporting students' well-being is promoting safe schools. We all know that prior to the pandemic that unfortunately our world was faced with different mass school shootings and other crisis events that occurred. And as a result of that, my school in particular, again, has asked me to be the crisis lead. So every school within the district has a crisis lead or a contact person, and I was identified to be that person. I did a few years ago. I went through Prepare training, and Prepare training is actually offered by the National Association of School Psychologists. It looks at being able to prevent and prepare for psychological trauma, being able to reaffirm safety, evaluating psychological trauma, conducting triage, and how to reestablish systems of support for students. And so using that model as a basis, I use that to be able to support my school. And so every year at the beginning of the year, I retrain all student services team members on these practices. And then everyone is given a folder with information and resources as it relates to crisis. And then what is it that our school would do in the event that a situation does happen, such as the death of a student or a faculty member? And so we talk about that and how to utilize those resources. I also identify all of our internal crisis team members, which will consist of all of our support staff as well as our administrators. And then I also identify those external support staff, and that would be people at nearby schools. So I do select our feeder middle schools because they may be familiar with some of the students. And then I also select some of the nearby high schools because of them being familiar in working with high school students. In this role, I also consult with other support team members if they are in the process of conducting a suicide risk assessment, or even after the assessment, or talking about or reviewing the student safety plan. And then I also make sure that our staff members are aware of what are the procedures that our staff should take if a student has any type of suicide ideation, be it at school or at home. Because we have been in a remote setting, we have made sure that the remote card that tells and outlines what to do when students are at home was provided to all staff members along with an explanation. And so for any student so far this year that has expressed ideation, staff members, to my knowledge, have all followed protocol. And then I have been included on the communication to know what students after hours, meaning after work on the weekend, that we will have to follow up with. And then when I'm on the email, I do contact the counselor so we can schedule a time to do the follow-up or establish procedures for completing the process for that student. So it's a hard job, but it's a job, unfortunately, that we do have to do because we always want to make sure that we're prepared and that students feel safe when they are in our school building. So the strength of my work is due to my relationships that I build with my colleagues and stakeholders. One way of developing relationship is teaming with others to support the various needs of students. Consultation and collaboration are key to making it work. So in this next section, I will describe how I consult and collaborate with others. One of the first things that I do is you have to understand your staff and the culture and the climate of your school. Because I have been at this school for 8 years, when I moved into a full-time position, I was already familiar with the staff, with the students, with the parents, and with the community. So extending my services an additional 2 days, all I did was just add it to what I was already doing and making it better. So one of the ways that I collaborate with the staff, again, was the panorama that I talked about earlier. The panorama is very new, and so none of our staff members, including myself, had used this before. Our staff is quite familiar with analyzing content information for English and common formative assessments and looking at previous EOC scores and going to Navigator and being able to look at patterns and trends for students in departments and grade levels, but doing the same thing for social and emotional needs is kind of different. People like to say that's that touchy-feely stuff. And so in making them feel comfortable, our upcoming December training with the staff, we will actually go over how to look at the panorama data that you have accessible to you, and then how to use that to improve and build community within your classes, as well as to be able to recognize just different needs that the students have, and then what routes and resources do we have to be able to support those students. An example for student collaboration is we have this phenomenal club called Continue Club. And our Continue Club is made up of students who want to promote mental health awareness in our school community. So with that particular club, I serve as their subject matter expert. So whenever they're going to do a school-wide project or an activity, they come and they talk to me. Because we're in a remote setting, about a month ago, the president sent me an email, and then we set up a time for us to be able to talk through the activities to make sure that students are appropriately providing the right type of support and recognizing boundaries and making sure that they're adhering to different codes of conducts and principles that I have to follow as a school psychologist, and making sure that they're not giving out and or obtaining very sensitive information that should not be in their possession. But overall, it's a phenomenal club. When we were on remote, they did mental health awareness, and they told me what they were going to do each day. Students at our school participated by taking pictures and uploading it onto social media, and then doing the hashtag for that particular event. The Continue Club, I think, is great in bringing awareness to mental health needs in our school, and I certainly always look forward to working with that club sponsor, Dr. Van, as well as their president, to make sure that we're able to do that in a safe and positive way. Finally, at the district level, there are two different professional learning communities that I want to highlight that I'm involved with. One professional learning community would be the traumatic brain injury. I've always been fascinated about the brain, functioning of the brain, and how it impacts just students' lives, their learning. And so when I was given the opportunity to go through the additional training to be on the Traumatic Brain Approved Providers Registry, I ran and did it. It was a phenomenal experience. It challenged me and stretched me, but it allowed me to be able to use that information not only with our students with a confirmed TBI, but also to be able to use that when doing other types of evaluations. In the district that I work in, we do meet quarterly, 4 times a year, and we use that as an opportunity for case consultation, talking about the medical situation with the student, the trauma or injury that the student occurred, any type of medication that they're on, and then the educational impact. I use that information to go back because I do evaluations at schools that are not my own. I did do an evaluation at an elementary school recently, and I helped that team in deciding what was the most appropriate educational category, how to support that particular student with remote learning, and then eventually as that student transitioned to hybrid learning. And then finally, I want to talk about the school psychologist in secondary schools. As stated earlier, my district recognized the importance of improving the ratios of all student services, including school psychologists. So 3 years ago, I was assigned to a single school assignment. And in that single school assignment, my boss at that time, Cindy Shaw, asked me to put together a professional learning community so we can look at how services are delivered or will be delivered at those schools. She asked for my recommendation, and I selected or recommended Shannon Simmons and Lynn Martyr to facilitate that. And together we have worked as a team to create a framework for those that are working full-time in secondary schools to provide those services. And our work now looks at being able to use the standard treatment protocol, looking at those evidence-based measures and how to use them to create case studies for our colleagues to be able to use. So, providing a range of comprehensive services is doable by having a low student ratio. I am thankful to the Office of Student Wellness and Academic Support, Dr. Penn, and Director of School Psychological Services, Natalie Moore, for recognizing the importance of improving school psychologist ratios. I am also appreciative of my principal, Jennifer Dean, who allows me to take on various leadership roles to improve all student outcomes. Thank you to my fellow school psychologists and colleagues who always support my ideas to help students, parents, and teachers. So thank you so much. And that concludes my part of my presentation. And now I'm going to shift it to my colleague from Wake County.
Thank you so much, Leah. So my name is Ina Nico, and I serve 2 urban high schools. And I'm going to be focusing in on one aspect of what a school psychologist can do when the 4 areas of need that Lee had referred to are in place. So just like if we could, there we go. So just like my 2 colleagues, I support the evaluation process. And like my colleagues, I also provide consultation to parents and teachers. I serve on various teams at the school and district level, and I provide interventions to students, albeit currently everything's virtual. I must admit that I was one of those statistics. I left the profession years ago because all I did was test, and that was unsatisfactory. We can go to the next slide. So I feel very thankful that things are very different today. We do more than conduct evaluations, as you've already heard. Luckily, one aspect of my job hasn't changed. Each day, I engage in problem solving. I think that's my superpower. I just don't problem solve by gathering data in a testing situation like I used to years ago. Sometimes I tackle little problems, things like teaching a student what to do when somebody hurts their feelings. Sometimes it's solving bigger things, like working with a team to develop a plan for how to support a 10th grade student who's reading at a 5th grade level. And sometimes I'm just not quite sure how to problem solve because the situation is so heavy. Like how to support a student and their school when that student turns on Facebook live at 1:30 in the afternoon at school and watches another student cut their forearm. Whatever the situation, I problem solve. I problem solve and I develop interventions so that we can get students to the finish line, which is to graduate in June of every year on time, armed with 21st century skills and ready to succeed in society. One of the things I put up here is what we are not. I wanted to talk briefly about what we are not. Whenever I tell somebody I'm a school psychologist, there's usually this comment implying that I'm a mind reader or I have magical skills or somehow can change a person. And for the record, none of us have magic powers. Our training has been to provide us with the lens to look at things, to problem solve in order to figure out how to change behaviors. That involves teaching students how to problem solve themselves, how to look at things from different perspectives, and making changes to move themselves in the direction that they want to be in. So why does that make us a great resource? Because I think we are the best. Well, I would argue that we are the most cost-effective position in a school system because of our diverse skill set. If I look at the school psychologist through the lens of an administrator, I think the school psychologist, or all of us, are the best value for our money. One person can provide direct and indirect support to students, educators, and families, all to help students graduate on time. If I look at the school psychologist through the lens of a taxpayer, I think we also provide value. We often teach students skills that are super important, but aren't always explicitly taught because they're not part of the academic standards. Next slide, please. So I want to focus the remaining few minutes to discuss one of the groups that I'm involved with. It is because I work with several amazing administrative teams and student service teams that I'm able to do this work. 11 years ago, I developed a program that we called Students with a Goal, or SWAG. The name has changed as the program evolved, but for tonight's purposes, I'm still going to call it SWAG. So SWAG is a program to support African American young men graduate from high school on time, ready to embark in post-high school education. We realized this need existed after we looked at our annual yearly progress for the 2009-2010 school year. The results showed us that African American young men did not graduate at the same rate as students in other cohorts. And after hearing this, I felt that an intervention was necessary. I didn't know what to do, so I did some problem solving, I looked at some research, and I came up with some ideas for this program. So I identified 5 factors, 5 points that kind of drove our program. The first one is that we focus on the kid in the middle. We identified incoming 9th grade students, and we looked at their EOG scores and their GPA in middle school. And the kid in the middle is defined as a child who has an EOG score of a high 2, low or mid 3, and a GPA of 2.5 to 3.5. These students are not supposed to be receiving any other support through either special ed or AIG. And this is a group that typically is ignored. They're not seen. Another factor that was important for us is that we had to teach to empower our kiddos. Research suggests that educators need to help make connections between what's learned in the school and then to out-of-school experiences. So SWAG creates opportunities to help make those connections. So in turn, that empowers our kids to be successful in wherever setting they are. Another factor that we looked at was group membership, and we limited it to males. Nationally, educators are experimenting with opportunities where learning involves same gender peer situations. And some research suggests that males learn better when there's a balance between single sex and co-ed environments. So single sex learning environments provided the opportunities to include some instructional strategies. We got the kids up and moving, and there was a lot of competitive activities, and we incorporated those in our lessons. We also thought it was important that our kids understood the relevance of the knowledge they were being given every day. Students have many opportunities to get new information and new knowledge, and they're not sure how it's relevant to them. So we tried to make it relevant to them. We tried to do gender responsive instruction. We taught our kids about critical thinking, creativity, self-management, self-awareness, responsible decision-making, relationship building, and social awareness. So then, well, you know what, that's kind of the basis of the program. And then when we say, well, how is this advantageous to the different groups that I serve? I think about it from a school perspective. One of the advantages is that this is a super inexpensive program to operate. It takes me, and I have a male teacher who is my partner, and the two of us together, that's all you need. We create our own curriculum, we scrounge together funds from grants and stuff to go on field trips, but really this doesn't cost anything. And as our program has gotten bigger, we've had to involve other folks to work on it as advisors. But this is it. This is all it is 2 people who you've already have hired. I think the other thing that really helps the school is that it positively impacts graduation rates, because we are very successful every year. Our kids graduate, and that just adds to the graduation numbers. And ultimately, the reason we're here in education is because graduation is super important. And the other advantage to schools is that we build connections with businesses and organizations. Schools now have access to resources that they may not have had before, and businesses actually, after they've worked with some of our kids, they might hire them as interns, or they might hire them as part-time jobs. And then the mentors who work at the corporations also report that they have a wonderful sense of satisfaction. So it seems to me that everybody benefits there. When we think about how students benefit from this program, I've kind of broken it down into several areas. So the first one is academic support. We strengthen academic skills. We do that through lessons. We teach kids explicitly about organization, how do you brainstorm, problem solving, peer interactions, sequencing and inference skills, all super important. And then they meet with us and the coaches, myself and Mr. Jones at one of my schools, and we meet and we talk about grades and effort work completion. We also focus on academic rigor. It's important that these kids are encouraged to enroll in rigorous courses, honors, AP, IB classes. We work with parents to help them understand the importance of it. We also work with the kiddos to make sure they understand, how do I get into an AP class? What's the pathway I have to take? When kids are navigating these uncharted territories, sometimes they need help. So we hook them up with some peer tutoring to get them the support that they need. Another thing that we do in this program is we teach pro-social skill development. And all that means is we teach kids to understand who they are. What's your learning style, your personality traits, are you an introvert or an extrovert, and study skills, as well as behaviors to achieve on-time graduation. I remember one student told me a story about he was surprised at the impact that showing up to class on time had on his school performance. Who would ever have thought, right? Guest speakers also supplement what we do by discussing real life skills, talk about decision making, they talk about rudimentary budgeting and the importance of your credit score. They also expose kids to various careers that perhaps their family members had never done. And we also work with kids on something like we call it an elevator speech. So how do you sell yourself in a very short period of time? So that works on speaking and presentation skills. We also work with universities. So kids all know when they start this program, the expectation is after high school, you're going to college. So we go to field trips. We've gone to local colleges. We've gone to community colleges, HBCUs, four-year schools. We've partnered with some of the colleges to have special events that we've gone to. And this provides our kiddos with new experiences, and it helps them to see themselves on these campuses, because when they walk around, they're like, wow, there's somebody who looks just like me. This program also promotes civic and community engagement. So one school has a community service component, so we connect kids with opportunities that way. And another school which did not have that, we had some of those young men mentor fourth graders who will ultimately come to our school. And it was so exciting to watch our people do this, because you suddenly saw a surge in confidence in young men who had never had a voice before. And they started to shine, and they started to demonstrate their leadership skills as well. And so then how does this program benefit parents? Well, parents realize that there's an ally at their school. So if mom and dad aren't there, they know Ms. Nico's there, or Mr. Jones is there, and we're going to be able to, we'll go and stand up for your kiddo. It also helps with parent engagement. We reach out to our parents via phone calls, emails, newsletters, and then as a result, parents reach back to us and are in pretty much good, we're in touch a lot. And because I'm a psychologist, I always look for data kind of to support my efforts. So now that we've been doing this for 11 years, you have to ask, well, I've asked myself, is this successful? Should we keep doing it? And I think the answer is a resounding yes. So the data that I've collected over the last 10 years finds that we have a 100% graduation rate. Now, some of our kids move away. Some of the kids are reassigned to different schools, and some kids have said, you know, thank you very much, but this isn't the program for us. But the kids who stay with us, 100% graduate on time. All the students leave us having long-term goals, and they have plans for future education. Some kids go to Wake Tech because they want to learn a trade like plumbing, or some kids say it's just fiscally responsible for my family to go to Wake Tech for 2 years. I'm going to transfer to a four-year school. We have kids at HBCUs, and we have students in colleges across the nation. When I look at the the survey data that we have from kids report feeling that they're connected to each other in school. And yes, we have some absenteeism, but you can see they all call each other a family. And I love that that happens. Students report that they like the program. They say it's beneficial to them at every step of the way. For example, transitioning from grade to grade or from high school to college. Our discipline levels are very low. We have kids who rarely get in trouble. Students are enrolled in rigorous courses. We make sure that they've at least taken one honors level class per year. Parents also report that they find the program valuable. I think to me that's really exciting, because sometimes parents, you know, when we first approach them and say, hey, we have this great opportunity, they look at you like, really? But yeah, we do. And parents time after time tell us how much they appreciate their kids' support. And because of our data, one of my principals has asked that we expanded the program to serve young women. And our first cohort of young women is getting ready to graduate this year, and they are on track for 100% graduation rate. So we're very excited. I know I've kind of rushed through this, but I just wanted to end by saying that this is a very simple but effective program that's based on educational research. And because I have the time to do these things other than tests, this is what I've been able to do. I've been able to create a program that meets some of the needs of our school community. If you have any questions, certainly reach out to me on Twitter. Thanks for your time.
Thank you very, very much to everyone. And now I want to give a chance to ask, any of our guests tonight if they have any questions. And I know that one of the things that I have a question to get it started with, because I've been very intrigued. Ina, how many students do you have? What is your ratio? 1 to how many?
A million. I have 2 high schools. One high school has 2,100 and the other was 23 or 23, 24.
So that, I hope the audience picks up on how critical that is. Amazing. 1 to 4,500. So we know that that's not good. Leah, how many kids do you have at your high school?
1 to 2,350.
Okay, and Lee, you have 2 schools also, right?
I have 2 schools, and I'm about 1 to 1,500.
1,500. So I want to make that point to our guests tonight, because when we looked at those ratios at the very beginning, when all the national organizations are saying 1 to 500, sometimes they say 1 to 700, but they've never said 1 to 1,500, 1 to 2,300, 1 to 4,200. I've never seen that. And you professionals are working in the largest school districts with the most opportunity for these positions. So that is alarming when you think about that. This is a statewide perspective. And I think just to go back at the beginning, Lee, I think you said something like 22 counties have absolutely no one in their county. And so, so that's just mind-boggling. I'm going to turn to my associates here, Lynn and Elizabeth, and see if anybody has any other questions. One other thing I wanted to ask you to talk about just for a second, what is the relationship that the school psychologist has to the school counseling program? You're not replacing them, right? Are you working in partnerships with them? Or because you could, sometimes people ask us, well, you have school counselors, why do you need any, social workers, why do you need a school psychologist? I wonder if anybody would like to comment on that for our audience to understand.
I can comment on that. In the district that I work in, we recognize that everyone comes with their own lens and experience, and it helps to be able to provide a more comprehensive view of looking at the whole child. So in our district, we actually have student services, professional learning communities. And at the school that I work at, we meet on Wednesday mornings at 10:30. So you guys know what I missed today. So we meet on Wednesday mornings at 10:30, and it will be all of the counselors. There are 7 counselors. We have a full-time social worker. It will be myself. We have a school-based mental health therapist. We have a career development coordinator, and we have a college advisor. And so as a student services team, we are charged with working collaboratively to be able to provide services. Everyone has their own lens and perspective on how they look at a student. Yes, we do have school counselors. At my high school, they do a lot in regards to graduation. So improving the graduation rate, working with students with scheduling, and making sure students are taking the classes that they are supposed to be in to graduate. They also support the social and emotional learning needs, but we do that collectively as a team. At our school, the counselors are assigned to students by Alpha, their last name. And so The school social worker is assigned to 3 of the counselors, and I'm assigned to the other 3 counselors. So when they're needing collaboration with students, or they have students with very high mental health needs or reoccurring problems or situations, then we work collaboratively to be able to support those students. We do have a student services professional calendar that tells us what are some suggested things and data we should be looking at throughout the school year, just to make sure that we are more comprehensive and that one school may not be lacking versus another school just because of experience level of the different team members. I have found working on this student services PLC that it has been beneficial because we do all work together and we're all able to make a difference in the lives of students.
Anyone else, Lee or Ina, did you have anything to add from your perspectives?
I mean, I think Leah said it well. I mean, we all work as a team, and you know, I guess I like to parallel things with other systems and organizations and even businesses. Every business has some kind of, or I would just say most, if you know, all businesses and organizations have some kind of teaming structure. If you went into a hospital and, you know, you're going to have different kinds of doctors in there. You're not just going to have one, you know, general practitioner. You're going to have surgeons. You're going to have tons of different types of nurses. You're going to have a cardiac nurse. You're going to have, everybody works as a team. So you need people, you need that teaming structure to effectively, you know, make your systems work and function well and address a whole child framework. So we definitely have overlapping skills, no doubt about it. But we each have our skill set that is, you know, specific to school psychology.
Okay, and another question is, how do you use community resources? Some folks are interested in, do you provide all the services for kids yourself, or do you connect them to the community services or other mental health services? What is your role in helping kids and their families outside of the school setting?
So in Wake County, we have a partnership with Alliance Mental Health. And so we have a protocol that we would follow. And if a family is looking for some support, some services, we would direct them through Alliance Mental Health. If a parent or a child is working with a private practitioner, sometimes they'll contact us and we'll work in partnership so that there's some consistency. For example, if a therapist is teaching a child how to work with anxiety, we can, you know, work with the therapist so that we can use those same strategies. So if a child needs some quiet time, here's what we do. If a child comes in with a series of flashcards that they use to change their self-talk, we can reinforce those concepts so that we're not working in isolation. We want to work collaboratively across the settings.
Okay, and we're going to have a hard end in about 8 minutes or less, because so our guests will know that. But a couple more questions, and one is, what is your legislative goals this year? I mean, you did a great presentation at the beginning, Lee, letting us know what you have built on. What are the kind of things that educational advocates and parent advocates, child advocates, what are some ways that we could help you or support your legislative agenda? I mean, what are kind of your top goals this year? We have a new General Assembly coming in session January the 13th. They're going to be setting a new 2-year biennium budget. So what's on your mind, and how can community advocates support you? Anybody?
Anything? Oh, anything. Funding that increases access to mental health for all children, specifically in rural communities. I can't say enough about this. I try to talk about this with every stakeholder in every group. Our rural communities need our help. And we have, you know, great but limited resources in our urban communities. but we have to look out for our rural communities. So anything that increases access to all students, but especially rural communities. We are always looking addressing recruitment and retention. We've got to address our pay scale, and that's true across the board for educators. We have to be competitive in our country, but we have to be deliberately competitive, and at least on the same playing field with our neighboring states. Because with 5 training programs, you know, I remind people we're making an investment in when we educate and train someone in North Carolina, and that investment just walks across state lines or to another state when they have a student debt and they have to go and I mean, you have to pay your student debt. You've got to find a job that you are able to support yourself and pay off that loan. And then any, you know, the recruitment tools that we know of are Forgivable Educational Loan Service. Again, the window opens on December 1st for that. So those are, you know, those are the 2 biggies. But
Well, let me ask you a little deeper on that one point you made about the pay scales. So these pay scales are not set locally, they're set at the state level, correct?
There's a base state salary scale, and then each school district adopts what their supplement is. So the supplements vary greatly, and I believe Public School Forum NC has done a wonderful job of illustrating the disparity across real estate wealthy areas. And so you'll see great disparity between counties that have obviously higher property tax. So real estate wealthy areas can have a higher supplement. I think, you know, I don't keep every bit of this information in my head all the times, but I was actually having a conversation with somebody who lives in Chapel Hill, and they said, well, and I was having this conversation with them, and they said, well, where is it the best in the state? And I said, right in Chapel Hill. That's where it's the supplement for teachers. And I think, well, the supplement is higher, is the highest in Wake County and then in Charlotte Meck. But as far as per pupil funding, sorry.
Okay, so the supplement that you're talking about, because we want to make sure, because we're going to, you know, we're on your team. We want to be going to the General Assembly this year again, and these facts really help us. So the supplement that you're talking about is the same supplement that our classroom teachers get? I can't hear you. Your sound went out.
Front row.
We can hear you now, Lee. No, it went away. Just so, Leah or Ina, did you want to supplement?
Are you there now?
Yes.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I'm getting per pupil funding mixed up with supplement. Sorry about that. Per pupil funding is the highest in I believe it's in Chapel Hill. The supplement's the highest in Wake County, and then Charlotte Meck, and then I don't know where it is after that, but it goes down. Sorry about that. Too many numbers in my head.
Yeah.
But the supplement is I think there's some districts that don't have a supplement. I don't have all those numbers in my head, but there is a great difference in the supplement. Once you take out Mecklenburg County and Wake County, it goes down pretty dramatically. So,
and I think it's not just the funding too. So that factors in, of course, because like you said, you have to pay bills. But if you go to a small system and you've got a brand new psychologist who's trained with all the latest and greatest data analysis and problem solving, and they arrive and they're like, sure, you know, we're going to give you less pay, and all you're going to do is be like a Pez dispenser and just test. You know, I think they end up going somewhere else.
And no backup. One of the complaints we heard on a webinar we did last year was that for not just especially for school psychologists, but also for social workers, that they could be the only one. We've had county nurses tell us, well, I'm the only nurse in the entire school system. So I think that lack of pay, lack of professional development opportunities, and then you throw in there, there's nobody to give you a break. There's no one to be your backup. That's pretty bad. But Lee, I think you have a good point that a beginning place is to get the base pay up, because with a more sufficient, it sounds like base pay, that at least helps get people into their positions. It doesn't take away the inequities across counties, but at least it makes it more likely that a county could afford to have a decent base pay, is more likely to recruit somebody than someone who is, if you're $15,000 below, and then the only way you can make that up is with your supplement, that inequity won't go away. And I think I think you proved your point in that that's why we have 22 counties with nobody, and probably a lot of other counties with just 1 or 2 or 3 people for a whole school system. So this has been really good. Well, we're going to let
approach.
Yes.
Multi-pronged approach for sure.
Right. There you go. So we have learned a lot tonight. We appreciate so much looking at the different approaches you're taking, looking at with even our very rich counties, the wide variety of caseloads you have, and understanding better the tremendous amount and range of services that you are providing already in your role as a school psychologist. And this has been fascinating. I'm really excited. I will tell our guests that Lee is coming back in January, bringing with her some folks that really focus a lot on the preschool services. We've talked here about a lot of things that middle school and high school kind of focused, but she'll be back looking at those young age kids and bringing with her some her colleagues that specialize in this area. So we're really excited about that. And we promise, our pledge to all of you is that we are not going to quit talking about this subject. We've got several future webinars coming up. We're also talking with some school psychologists in some of these rural areas that Lee has mentioned, and we hope to have some of them come and talk with us soon. So we're not going to quit talking about this subject and this need. So hopefully I'll be seeing all of y'all again, and we hope that when you have your legislative day in the General Assembly, you invite us to join you, because we're certainly behind you 100% for this critical role you play. And as you said at the very beginning of this presentation, helping kids to succeed in community, in their lives, and at school. So that's really critical. So I'll tell our guests as we go out tonight to please continue to connect with us. If you don't get our newsletter, please do go to Public Schools First NC and sign up. We're doing like all the cool kids. We're on Instagram and Twitter, as these women here tonight all shared their Twitter handle with you. And really tonight, this presentation is being recorded. It will be on YouTube shortly. So go to our YouTube channel and subscribe, and you'll be able to catch all of these webinars that we've done in the past and ones coming up over the next couple months. Thank you so much, Lee, Leah, and Ina. We appreciate the work you're doing. As a former social worker, it touches my heart to see how well trained you are, how passionate you are, and all the knowledge and skills and care for children that you bring to your jobs. It's heartwarming to me, and I hope that I know that everyone who watched us tonight saw that same passion for children and for your profession in your presentations and in your voice. So thank you very much. I appreciate you. Good night, and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Yvonne, and to Public Schools First NC for inviting us and having us highlight school psychologists.
Well, we've enjoyed it, and as I said, we'll stay tuned. We'll talk more.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.